Here we go. We should be connected and going. This is another epic show, dear Christy. Leo and Christy Zagami for the Leo Zagami show. Back once again on Saturday, 29th of April of the year of the Lord 2023.
Hi, Kevin. Kevin from Los Angeles.
Okay, Kevin from Los Angeles. And then who else we have? We have Corey, one of our sponsors. We have to, first of all, talk about our sponsors. So who are our sponsors today?
We have Bruce and Tina and Corey Chavez. Thank you very much. Ooh. And for everybody that bought the books, thank you very much.
That's good. That's good. That's good. It's good to know that there is some people who appreciate us. And of course, if you want to continue to appreciate us, you can do it through GoFundMe and through Cash App. Soon we might have another new option lurking around the corner. We don't know which one yet, but we're working on it.
What do you guys suggest that we go with? You can put it in the comments. Should we go with Fundly again? Should we go with GoFundMe? No, wait, we have GoFundMe. Give, Send, Go.
Yes.
I don't know the other ones.
Yes.
I don't know what other ones there are, so maybe we might try Give, Send, Go.
Okay.
Or we might just go back to Fundly.
We don't know. We don't know. We might try to see if we can get back on PayPal. We might see if we can go back on Fundly. This is definitely two options at the moment we are missing, but we definitely still need your support, and we want to thank our friends who have in some way participated today and helped us. So I will suggest an applause for our sponsors. Brava Cristi! Give us this applause, because at the moment I don't seem to find it here. I'm kind of like...
We had to switch computers.
We had to switch computers because we seem to have had some problems in the past episodes. So we wanted to use this new computer to avoid any audio problems that the other computer was giving us. And I already tried it today on... today with our show, of course, my Italian show, and it worked very good. So I think that we are in the right trajectory with this new computer. It's not really a new computer; it's actually an old computer that I have rehashed for this job. But
if you guys don't hear us, tell us right away. Let us know right away.
Yes, that is very important because I mean it's pointless for us to just go on with some. We know that that is not the problem. Depends from our computer. We have an occurring problem with the software of StreamYard that sometimes happens. But then, apart from that, we start to have this really annoying interruptions right at the start. Also, a very important show, and it kind of happened a couple of times, I think, you know. And then we, of course, realized that it was about time to change. So this is what is happening here in our how you say, Zagami world, and we are, of course, starting with the usual. The sound is there, the music is there. So thanks, Bruce. And thanks to our sponsors, and this is the Leo Zagami show. Actually, I want to just make a small interruption to see if I can fix that. Here we go. The only thing I noticed with this computer is that the volume seems to be a little bit low. But actually, that might be a positive thing, because at times our voices get covered by too much music. In any case, let me see if I can fix it here, because I still have... Now I have to do it. So there's always things that we have to... What happened? What happened? Okay. Let's see. What a technique. Are we frozen? No, we're not. Let's see if the mic is good. The mic is good. Okay. Everything seems to be
awesome.
I know. But I want to make sure that we didn't have any problem this week. And actually, Bruce is confirming you got a good audio. Lots of people come. The sound quality isn't quite as good, somebody said. But we can't seem that it is better than it was last week.
Well, at least it's an improvement.
At least it's a little bit of an improvement. Okay, the subject of today is a very particular subject, Christy, because it's a unique episode in the history of both Freemasonry and the Catholic Church that kind of got brought for a ride by this gentleman, this particular figure
his name is Leo.
His name was Leo. Actually, his real name was Marie Joseph Gabriel Antoine Jogan Page, and his pen name was Leo Taxil. So it wasn't like his birth name. But however, he was born in 1854. He would die in 1907 in circumstances that have not always been clear too much. But anyway, he died when he was only 53 years old. So he was rather young when he died. What happens with him is that he has, of course, an upbringing that is typically Catholic. He actually ends up studying in a Jesuit college for a long time, a Jesuit seminary. And after spending his childhood years in seminary, he suddenly becomes disillusioned with the Catholic Church. And at that point, he starts to find a way to kind of amuse himself and others, and began to see religious, let's say, ideology as almost socially harmful. He kind of went on the other side, and that is really what lays the foundation of this Leo Taxil figure. But guys, here we are in front of somebody who imagined for 12 years the whole of the world was really talking about him, and he was received by the Pope. And at one point, then he called for a press conference that he made in, I have actually a booklet, if you can pick it up, it's that booklet over there. Yes, it's a rare booklet that contains some of the work that I will be citing. And what happened was that Leo Taxil called all the journalists, ready to make an important announcement. He wanted to present really also this mysterious figure that he had been talking about for many years, who had then published herself some books. This is Leo Taxil, so we give, meantime, an idea of who he was. Here is Leo Taxil, and
he looks like somebody.
He looks like somebody.
I don't know who.
A familiar face.
Yeah.
Interesting. And of course, then there is, you see, he was this guy, basically, this Taxil hoax, then was not carried only on by him, because at one point, once he went in front of the Pope, he understood that the situation has gone a little bit out of control. When the Pope said, "I have all your books, I'm reading them from A to Z," and he took basically 45 minutes out of his time to meet with Leo Taxil, the situation seemed pretty serious. You see, when he called this conference on April 19, 1897, he will eventually, instead of introducing Diana Vaughan to the press, he will announce that it was all a big scam. It was all a big joke. He had made this prank both towards the Catholic Church and on the other side towards Freemasonry. However, the problem with this big prank is that since then, bunch of people in certain conspiracy circles have taken his books to heart. And also there is some mysteries relating to Leo Taxil, because, of course, when he converted to, first of all, he always admitted, and this is true, he entered Freemasonry in the Grand Orient of France, and he never really went beyond entered apprentice.
Okay.
So, but he managed to suddenly be able to accede to all his, as soon as he had all the rituals, like it often happens even for an apprentice, you can manage to get all the rituals, though you will still have to go through the various initiations and passages that bring you. At one point, he converted to the Catholic faith. He had been a great anti-Catholic. And at one point, instead, he converts to Catholicism. And after this, he also brings into the fold this hoax, because his conversion that was solemnly received into the church, because, when a guy like this, he was actually the founder, I think, of the anti-clerical movement. So, it's like somebody that from complete communist turns out a convert. Well, that is it's an important thing. And he was definitely somebody who was standing in that direction, socialist, let's say that those were the times in France, the experience of La Commune in Paris and so on. So what happens here? The thing is that what happens is so serious. Like I said, in 1887, 2 years after his conversion, he had an audience with Pope Leo XIII.
He's a Leo too?
Yes, he was a Leo too. It was Pope Leo XIII.
All these Leos.
Who even got pissed off, who got angry with the Bishop of Charleston, who immediately denounced the whole thing, these anti-Masonic confessions, as a fraud. And these Masonic confessions were made with books that at one point in the 1880s were embraced by a lot of people, but then in the 1890s became so popular that at that point it wasn't only Leo Taxil. There was him, there was his secretary, who used to be a representative for how you call them? Typewriters. She actually, Diana Vaughan, existed. Diana Vaughan was a secretary. She actually was, her great, I think, grandfather was American, so she had this Vaughan surname, but her parents were basically French. She had this surname, but she was basically French. But anyway, the way he presented her to the masses was like this Freemason of immense power, and he made her so popular. At one point, they even believed her in Italy, and they sent her an honorary title of the 33rd degree. I still have it in a book in Italy. And there was one guy who Leo Taxil even managed to convince, one Freemason, Domenico Margiotta. He convinced him that he had actually met her. And he got so convinced at one point that he even asked Diana Vaughan, this Domenico Margiotta, who himself then went on publishes books confirming that he met Diana Vaughan, that of course was all an invention. Diana Vaughan was never Freemason, but because Leo Taxil was so clever, and the hoax, it's not just a simple hoax. Here we're talking about ritual, very detailed ritual. In the 1890s, 1891, they create even a Palladis rite called Palladist. Now, in Italy, there is a saying, when you say some great bullshit, you are a pallonaro, you're somebody, che palla, big palla, it's this big ball of bullshit. But in any case, in the case of Leo Taxil, it was regarded as a very serious thing, this Palladis rite. Everybody started talking about it, even the Freemasons. At one point, Arthur Edward White, who himself was very well known for his translation also of the Eliphas Levi work, very known in Masonic circles, published a book called Devil Worship in France, where he actually contested a lot of the things and explained how Eliphas Levi's ritual sounded like a lot of things picked up from Eliphas Levi, of course, and a lot of things that were not, but he still said maybe Diana Vaughan gets it wrong because she's on drugs. Because another thing that Leo Taxil describes in his books is the use of hashish, marijuana within these rituals where demons are evoked within Freemasonry. Now, there is also some elements of truth, though. For example, the conjuration of the four, which, of course, Edward White in his book says is picked up from Eliphas Levi, is a practice which we find in Martinism and in certain rites of Freemasonry. It's actually taught this, especially in the Memphis and Mizraim. And it was in the Memphis and Mizraim that Leo Taxil was talking about this conjuration of four. So, I mean, it seems like he has a lot of knowledge, more than any apprentice will have, because if you have that kind of knowledge, and Freemasons, even some Freemasons believed in him. So he was so convincing, so detailed in his studies and his thing, that it was very difficult to debunk him. There was another friend of his, a doctor. He convinced him about the thing is, he convinced people to participate to the hoax willingly, and they had fun. Even Diana Vaughan knew about the whole thing being a hoax, and she actually said, okay, let's participate to it, let's have fun. Until, of course, it became way too serious, because when imagine a scene almost of a movie in the corner of a building in Paris. Suddenly, all these people, there is present also important members of the clergy, Freemasons, all kinds of people for this press conference, and he starts to talk about all this mystification, how he even made a joke of the Pope when he went in front of the Pope, and the Pope said, I read all your books. It's very, very detailed. The devil is attacking the church for Freemasonry. You're such a holy man, such a good man, Leo Taxil. And Leo Taxil said, so what can I do for you, the Pope said. Oh, there is one thing, Leo Taxil said, one thing I would like, to die at your feet. And of course, you say this in front of a press conference where you're announcing that this is a scam. People started to laugh. People started to get also very angry. Imagine this. At the end of the conference, the police had to intervene and escort them to a place that was a few hundred meters away, a cafe, because there was a lot of tension in the air. Yeah. I mean, here you have to understand, first of all, there is some things that don't really, and I mean, I talked about this this mystification with some of the biggest experts in Italy. I don't know if you remember when we were with Kaoru Nakamaru in Turin with the Grandmaster Luigi Prunetti. And that was a thing we discussed. Luigi Prunetti is an author of many books on anti-Masonry and stuff. And somebody says, freezing up with no sound. Please let us know if the sound is going on or if it's just a problem maybe of somebody, because some people might have problems in their own computer. So please keep us updated if the sound is going or not. Let me check here with the audio. Audio. Yes, seems like the sound is okay. So, okay. If you want to know more about what I'm discussing here, first of all, the context, the satanic context in France, I will suggest volume 6.66.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because the book that Arthur Edward Waite did had also some interesting elements. When he confirms that Satanism was there for a long time in France, of course, that's true. As well as the conjurations of four using the Martinist, which I just cited. Volume 4 is very important. So this is very, and of course, when you want to also read about Christie's personal experience with Freemasonry, Confessions on an Illuminati Princess, Volume 1
and 2.
Now, we can each have, our own experiences with Freemasonry. They can be positive, they can be negative. But here we're not talking about a innocent hoax. There was something really weird about this hoax from the very moment he converted to the Catholic Church. This guy converted to the Catholic Church. Because the first thing they did was actually to send him to the Jesuits. And he himself describes his encounter with this very skilled Jesuit. He said, this is a skilled Jesuit. He used to be, I think, a police officer or something before becoming a Jesuit. And he said, he was a very skilled guy they wanted me to meet, you know. He was also received in the Vatican by the Secretary of State and by a couple of cardinals. Amongst, one of them, Cardinal Rampolla, was also connected for real with Freemasonry later. He was even made a saint by the Church of Aleister Crowley, and he almost became Pope, but he was his papacy was stopped because I think the emperor, the Austro-Hungaric emperor, or somebody, the Kaiser, now I don't remember exactly, stopped the election because of him being a Freemason, Cardinal Rampolla. So how is it possible that Cardinal Rampolla receives Leo Taxil and says, oh, I find all your things in your book totally correct? How do you find possible that the Jesuits accept this kind of mystification and they even talk about it in their publications when the Jesuits have been so skilled for centuries, even infiltrating, you know, and inspiring the creation of the Order of the Illuminati by Adam Weishaupt? There is many who say that, of course, Abbe Marotti, who was involved in writing some of the rituals, and who was, of course, a Jesuit at one point. Then the Jesuits, as we know, were also kicked out of the Vatican for a period of time, and they were definitely involved in various Masonic rites. There is ample evidence, even the research, the Masonic research institutes and lodges have confirmed that Jesuits have had an involvement, at least with the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite. That is pretty known to all the valleys, as they call themselves in the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite. So how is it possible? I mean, you are a Jesuit. You know exactly what Freemasonry is all about, because they have the rituals, they have everything. They were even capable of helping out, some of the Masonic orders in the development of some of their rites. Even the Golden Rose Croix was connected to the Jesuits. So it seems a little bit weird and naive that suddenly this guy comes. Of course, his description of the rituals were pretty detailed, the way in the lodges all these obscene things happened, this evocation of demons. But some things were really ridiculous. A crocodile playing the piano with a demon. I mean, some far out stuff like this seems a little bit far-fetched. And it seems a little bit strange to me that the Jesuits suddenly gave in to all this thing. The Jesuits...
What's the trick?
What's the whole thing? Let's historically see a little bit what the context is here. Now, we know that in the 1870s, the Grand Orient of France suffered that schism. They broke from the United Lodge of England and the rest of regular Freemasonry, and they welcomed everybody who was atheist in their lodges. This happened in the second half of the 1870s in France, with the very same obedience which then saw Leo Taxil being initiated. So this seems to be definitely an interesting element. We have Freemasonry, which is fighting an internal war, a war that before saw also the possibility of pushing back into the throne of England, maybe a Catholic monarch with the Stuarts earlier on. So it seems strange to me, guys, that somebody like Leo Taxil, for how good, I mean, he was, okay, he had published a lot of amusing books. One was actually known, it was called the Amusing Bible. I mean, one was actually dedicated even to the life of Jesus, in which Taxil satirically pointed out inconsistencies, errors, and false beliefs in these religious works, or allegedly pointed out on these inconsistencies. And then we have debauchery of a confessor. We have even a book known as The Pope's Mistress, These were the kind of books he was writing before getting into the whole.
I bet people bought them. I bet they were interesting.
They didn't have radio. They didn't have TV. They didn't have, so I mean,
it sounds scandalous.
Definitely, it was always on the Taxil portrays before converting to Catholicism the Catholic Church as it really is, because actually, when he says they are hedonistic creatures exploring their fetishes in the manner of the Marquis de Sade, it was true. If you think about it, he was doing the exposure of the Vatican until he converted and did this whole hoax, but he was actually exposing the Vatican before that and saying things that, and maybe regarding Jesus, I think he didn't get it because he was way too atheist, way too, I don't know, cynic. And didn't really understand Jesus, I think. But when it came to the Catholic Church and their inconsistencies, their lies, their hypocrisy, well, we all know now in the year 2023 what they all are. So I think he was up to something. The Palladist cult, guys, was, something that... it was very detailed because he alleged that the Palladists were controlled by some kind of supreme entity based in Charleston, South Carolina, where is also the original home of the southern jurisdiction of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite. He had a lot of knowledge, I must say, because at one point, guys, he managed to even fool a lot of Freemasons. I mean, it's one thing to fool people who have never been in Freemasonry, but the level of details that he was putting in his rituals was kind of captivating the attention of Freemasons. Apart from Arthur Edward Wade, who came out, imagine, just before his admission, debunking him, but still believing that maybe Diana Vaughan existed and was getting it. Well, she existed, but she never was that she was doing this ritual and maybe she was too stoned and she was confused and victim of maybe, you know. I think that the incredible thing here is why we are still here in 2023 with people believing in this bullshit and making it part of their conspirational, you know. I mean, that's what was the first thing I did when I came into the scene, and I started to expose the New World Order, the Illuminati, and all the work that I've been doing. As you know, I've always tried to explain the Leo Taxil hoax first, because
I read it in your book.
Yeah, I write about it in volume 2 of my confession extensively and in a detailed way. And that is very important for people to understand. If we give importance, it's like this BS might have been because, you know, a few months before dying, Taxil said, I did it, and I managed to make a fool out of the Catholic Church and of Freemasons, and I did it because I just wanted to. I don't believe that he simply did it innocently to take. I think that instead, like also Luigi Prunetti said to me, he believes that the Jesuits had a more deeper involvement, that they encouraged it, that they knew that it was a fraudulent hoax, but it served the purpose back then of mining Freemasonry, especially in a moment in which there was some fractures in the Masonic network, with the Grand Orient moving towards the atheistic and becoming really the laboratory for communism, for all those brothers who would then give birth to the Grand Orient of the Russian people and to the future Soviet Union. So I think it's very interesting, the figure of Leo Taxil, especially when he goes and makes this confession the last 2 days to a Jesuit and says, I killed somebody. It was terrible, and, in a ritual, and this, and then I did this, and I did that, and and they believed in him completely. And then, I mean, when he actually exposes all this, and he gets a lot of laughter from the audience. Some of them get really angry, though. There is even a priest at one point of the conference, of press conference, goes on a table and starts to you know, and it's kind of like definitely. I think that Bruce is onto something. Jesuit style, divide and conquer. There is something Jesuitic about the soul hoax. There is something Jesuitic, and the more I study each detail and all the, you know, I've been studying this hoax for many years because my intention is to study it more and more so I can understand more and more. We all have to study in our lives, even people like me. We don't know everything. We try to, but we don't know anything. You know, we know a little bit, and we need to know more. So I study, and I completely understand that some people can fall for someone, because the problem is that after Leo Taxil, 1907, yeah, what happened after that? Because that is the moment in which Aleister Crowley had just gone to Egypt in 1904. He would then initially disregard the Book of the Law, but like I explained in volume 8, he then picks it up again in 1909, 1910. He does the ritual, the Coronzo ritual, in 1909. Then in 1910, he does that other ritual, the Louisis rites, in a public setup in Caxton Hall. He actually tries to convince Freemasonry to embrace his Thelemic, Luciferian, satanic ideology. And for the first time, Freemasons are really actively embracing Satanism. I mean, what Arthur Edward White says in Devil Worship in France, which came out 1 year before Leo Taxil eventually admitted the hoax, was that Freemasons in certain rites, like the Memphis and Misery, tend to evoke elementals. The elementals, you know, the elementals are a subject which I've discussed very much in my books, especially in The Invisible Master, but also in volume 4. And if you think about it, he was not actually, Leo Taxil was saying the truth. So he wasn't so ignorant, and he knew things that you really need to be very high up to know those things. Who told him? How did he? Okay, he convinced his friend, Dr. Batil, to publish books and also start to enlarge this thing. He convinced Domenico Margiotta that Diana Bogan existed, and he published a book, Memory of a 33rd Degree, where he recounts when I met the fantastic Diana Bogan. He was so mesmerized by her at one point that then later on he asked her 100 lire back then to buy for his purchase of a house in Palmi in Calabria. She never replied, though. Of course, she never replied. But you see, this is phantasmagoric kind of. I mean, I find that this whole I want to show you Diana Bogan. I don't have the. I have actually the.
Not her.
Yes.
Oh, it looks like a guy.
Well.
Is it a guy?
No.
But how can she be in Freemasonry? They let girls in?
Okay. Let's rewind a little bit, because let's also not forget that up until then, the 33rd degree was never really given to women, but women had joined Freemasonry thanks to Cagliostro and to the right of adoption. And from that moment onwards, that then we have Annie Besant, Madame Blavatsky, actually before her, and the right, the ancient and accepted Scottish rite becomes part of the Druid man, and then as co-masonry, they also become invested in the 33rd degree. But definitely Leo Taxil was ahead of his time in his, or kind of like really hand in hand with the times. Almost like, I mean, his...
I don't like that guy.
Who, Leo Taxil?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but Leo Taxil, I mean, who can like somebody who made the greatest mystification without regard of anything, and really anything? I mean, at one point during the conference, the last conference where he exposed everything, one guy told him, at least respect the Pope. I mean, you are really disrespectful towards everybody. But the thing is that...
was he murdered?
There is a big possibility that he was murdered. Also because let's not forget that all this happens a few months after he finally comes out with, after many years, he comes out with a confession about, let's say, he came out with in the magazine, national magazine, a Illustrated American Monthly. Taxil is quoted as giving his true reasons behind the hoax, and this was 1906. Let's not forget that 10 months later, on March 31st, 1907, he dies. And he dies March 30th, he dies also on a specific date, because the 1st of April is April Fool's Day. So, I mean, you have to always, the significance, of dates, it's very important. You want to murder somebody, you want to launch a hidden meaning, a hidden significance. This is Le Frondeur. This is the magazine in which actually they talked about the whole, the mystification, le fumisterie du palladisme, Mr. Leo Taxil, his whole thing, So, I mean, he definitely made the front lines of the newspapers. The problem is here that still to this day, Masonic mystification, forgeries like this are so complex that then it's very difficult for the normal person, to understand what is true and what is false. Also because some of the accusations that he made with Aleister Crowley became a reality. I mean, if Leo Taxil came after Aleister Crowley, I don't know if he would have been taken too seriously or if he might have taken even more seriously. I don't really know what kind of reaction people will have, because at that point they will have maybe said, okay, we know we have Aleister Crowley, he ended up in the headlines as the wickedest man in the world with that hobby of Telemencephalus or something.
They really had a lot going on during that time.
Definitely, there was there was a lot going on, but the thing is that there is here, and I have a bunch of letters that were written by cardinals, bishops, to Diana Vaughan. You're such a holy lady. What you're doing is great. You turn to the good side. I mean, all this BS, and the same also in regards to Leo Taxil. Oh, you have, I mean, when I started my, my exposure work, some people in the Masonic world knew me, of course, but wanted to push, how you can say, push
bullshit,
say Leo Zagami is not to be trusted because he's just like Leo Taxil.
Oh, isn't that convenient?
Well, it was very convenient, but they got it wrong. They got it wrong, first of all, because Leo Zagami had been for many years in the Canterbury Masonic Research Center in London. My mentor was Julian Rees. I had basically been a Masonic historian, somebody deeply. So when this kind of accusations came towards me, I said, okay, let me tell you more about why I'm not doing what Leo Taxil was doing. And I started to take out pictures, documents, and then I started to publish my books, of course, and show to the people also, what I was involved in. I mean, they could see it. You could see it in Italy. I mean, it was like, we used to go and meet people, this, that. It wasn't fictitious in any way.
No. And then I got in it too.
And then
that was real.
And that was real too. So there is a lot of difference with other kind of figures, like, for example, John Todd, who was always a little bit, he talked a lot, he brought a lot on the table, but he never really managed to prove it. He was, of course, working in a different time, in the 70s. He was popular among the evangelical community. He had made many claims. Maybe there was some foundation, but he didn't bring the evidence of this conspiracy that he claimed he had been part of. And the same can be said for other figures. Fritz Spring Meyer, for example, is another interesting figure. His book was, imagine, was in the library of Osama bin Laden when they allegedly killed him. So, I mean, Fritz Springmeier once, I remember, called me from jail. If I received this call I was in Italy. I said, no thanks. No,
did they say we received a call from an inmate?
Yeah, from an inmate.
You're receiving a call from an inmate. I've never received a call from an inmate.
No, but I mean, I don't want to. I think that the thing is that I think that not because I want to, that my books and my work has brought to the table more than all these hoaxes, or at least doubtful characters which never really brought some consistencies to their because when I arrived in 2006, the first thing I noticed was there were this alleged ex-Illuminati that was saying this and that, but there was no names, no places, no details about the rituals, lodges, system followed. I thought that is, I don't know, it's not credible.
Oh, like this Illuminati person, I remember it was before I knew you, but I would hear these things like on YouTube. You'd see like this Illuminati person coming out and talking about this and that, or maybe it was after we met. I don't know. But you hear like about these other Illuminatis that come out.
But I mean, I respect everybody and whatever they do, but
they didn't have any proof.
First of all, they didn't risk their own life to bring you this truth in the way that I did, because as Christy can tell you herself, we had to flee Italy in the end. I mean, it wasn't a joke. When Christy came the first time she ever came to Italy, in the afternoon, we were in an office, a high-end office in Rome of the Illuminati, and it was a real thing with Giorgio Bass. That was the first thing we did.
I already got it in my book.
And so I mean, today, after all the books I brought out, now it's a little bit more difficult for these
clowns
to debunk me. There was people like the Grand Lodge of Maine, and they had this guy, I remember, who had this website of Anti-Masonry. It's still up. You can see the Leo Zagami hoax.
No, it's how can Leo Zagami be so stupid or something like that. Because everybody had to say, when I first got with you, have you seen this? Because I didn't watch that kind of stuff. I didn't care. I knew it wasn't true.
No. This was Leo Zagami, another anti-Mason, I think, was the name of this Masonic Info. This is supposed to be a credible site, and there was all kinds of things written against me, saying that at one point they said, oh, well, I wasn't simply in regular Freemasonry, so, and I didn't understand the difference between, like, regular Freemasonry defines the regular lodges and what they do. I mean, and there was all this BS, and the biography, I made a joke, I want to be Illuminati as a joke. They made it as a, and I showed all the documents and stuff that they were poorly dolly or tedious and double bore, and then you see all these things that tended to.
They're just really nasty. They're trying to put that out before
Yeah, of course.
At the very beginning of their exposure, just to try to shut you down, but they can't, because you have God standing with you.
Yeah, no, but I must say that in the end, these things were interesting to debunk in a way and to prove them wrong once I show the documents, show the meetings, went into the places that they claimed I could have no access to. I even had my own lodge and obedience in Italy and so on. You know, I mean, of course I know that the eclipses is irregular, or the difference between continental progressive masonry and British masonry. I brought my wife to be initiated in a lodge in London under a charter from Memphis Misraim in Switzerland, full of Frenchies and Masons from the United Lodge of England, meeting in an irregular setup. Wow. Huh? This is incredible. I mean, I was capable of organizing all this. And Christy, you saw how I was received in London, in the center of the city. They made a lodge in the church of St. Edmunds. My family is buried in the city of Bury St. Edmunds, which is the only city with the name of a saint in London. And so how was your experience? Did you see anything diabolic in this lodge? Maybe there wasn't the right energy at some points. Maybe you were not happy. See anything. But there wasn't anything satanic.
There was not. Absolutely not. It was actually very, very Christian. I mean, when I was doing my Masonic things, I was staring up at Jesus. So, I mean, it felt good to be in there. I didn't feel bad about that. I mean, further on, you know, we can talk about that if you want, but like at that moment, aside from some other things, I felt about some things.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it was an experience. And the good thing was that I went back to London, back in a lodge after many years after I started my revelations. It was the first time. Mm-hmm. And all these brothers came, and they were from the Società Rosacruciana in Anglia. They were from various.
They were all very proper.
They were
like
all
marching
and all very from the English, from the Royal Arch, and I thought, you know, they might be a little bit negative against me, but in reality, everything I did to try to benefit really from the outside with my criticism was actually appreciated, I think, to a certain extent. And I was trying to revolutionize Freemasonry from within. I might not have succeeded, but at least I tried.
You tried.
You know? And so to be accumulated with a hoax like the Leo Taxil that we are discussing today, it was completely. I mean, I used to make a joke. I remember with Lon Milo Duquette once at the end of a conference we had. I think near Atlantic's bookshop in London, I went out and I called for a taxi, said, Leo with taxi, Leo Taxil. We had a joke about it. But I mean, the thing is this, the mystification of Leo Taxil might have been actually, unfortunately, of help for the Satanists, because after that, nobody believed that, you know, Masonry was satanic any longer. So they kind of put down their guard. And that was maybe what they shouldn't have done.
Yeah, really.
Because the moment in which they put down their guard, the real
all the Satanists came in. And now it's full of Satanists.
Now, you know, you go even here to the local lodge and you see.
I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want anything to do with it. So I will say that publicly. I don't want anything to do with Freemasonry.
Well, Freemasonry in the present system.
The way it is, I don't want to be a part of that.
Here in California.
In California,
here,
no
absolutely.
Way.
I mean, if tomorrow I open my own.
What I learned in the catechism was really great, and I felt like it was really great and everything, but they're not following that. So I didn't learn about that stuff. I didn't see all that Baphomet and pentagrams.
Regarding the Baphomet, the Baphomet figure, of course, what did the Leo Taxil do? He picked up the Baphomet figure from Eliphas Levi, and then he put it in his own book. And in fact, here I have also an image of it that I can show you. I mean, I think that Leo Taxil, generally speaking, was a very cultured man. He might not have used culture in the right way, his knowledge. He might have thought about a lot of people as stupid. He might he came out, though, with all these things that he definitely had research, because let's remember that in France, in that moment, they were active a lot of important people. Eliphas Levi died in 1875, but you had Peladan at that point, Stanislaw de Guaita. There was actually a war between Satanists and non-Satanists in France, which I talked also about in my books in that period. I talk about it even in volume 1. And so France, there was actually a real war going on with some kind of real Satanist that had been, though, like Arthur Edward White said, active for a very long time, because like my book, volume 6, teaches you, Satanism in France was born with Catherine de' Medici almost 5 centuries ago, and that's where they did their first satanic mass. And then later on, at the court of the Sun King, with, of course, Le Voisin, the Phare de Poison, this 2,500 fetus of children found in a garden, sacrificed, and so on. So Satanism is a real thing in France. It's not just a conspiracy theory. Okay, and I think that actually one that depicted it very well was Roman Polanski in that excellent movie, The Ninth Gate. Roman Polanski, that I saw today, made a pic with the woman that in 1977 he allegedly raped, but she said it wasn't a rape. I was, I wanted it. I was 13, but I wanted it. And she went and visited with her present husband, and they went out. Imagine how awkward. Her, the husband, Polanski, and the wife in Paris, and then for a interview with a French magazine. The French, they love this kind of thing. That's why Leo Taxil was so popular. That's why the detail got so sordid in these lodges. With at one point there was Diana Bogan. Now Diana Bogan, Bogan was also surname connected. There is actually a guy, Thomas Bogan, one of the first Rosicrucians, and so he said, "Oh, she's the descendant." Everybody took it very seriously. The descendant, I mean, it was like, and we talked about actually Thomas Bogan in our episode on the Rosicrucians. He was a known philosopher, a Welsh clergyman and philosopher, and he died in 1666. So also that gave a little bit, he died in 1666. Ooh, it was creepy. So, I mean, of course, he was very clever, Leo Taxil, in picking up these details. But I mean, some of the details also of the actual rite, and the way he divided all, the various, triangles and the various administration, let's say, of it. It was so detailed that it was very difficult for non-Freemasons, but even for Freemasons, because Freemasons started to believe that and at one point, to demonstrate how crazy things got, the Grand Orient of France and the Grand Orient of Greece had to publicly go and say, "We are not ruled by any supreme entity beyond us. There is nobody that controlled us." Because, people will say, he was saying that behind the scenes, this palladism was ruling Grand Orient of France and all the various obediences. And so, it was like, so at one point, but I mean, when Leo Taxil eventually was interviewed and said, and made also his first statements in 1997, he always said, I didn't think that they would actually believe me at the beginning. I thought, it was so hilarious, so far out that I don't know. But this Leo Taxil sometimes is a little bit weird because he says things, but then thinking about it again, he spent 2 days confessing at a Jesuit, and the Jesuit said, "I see that you're genuine." No, there's no way. He says, "Oh, well, I even took the spiritual exercises of Loyola and I made them mine so I could make him believe I was genuine." I don't know. It seems a little bit. I think that we have to be skeptical when it comes down to this whole thing. Even his own confession, when he admits that there was because it seems a little bit. I want to make you read though some of these statements that he made before he died. Okay, Christine.
Members of the Masonic orders understand the false exposure heaped upon that organization in anti-Masonic wars. The Catholic Church and many other religious orders have been the victims of these half-written and oftentimes venomous attacks. The Confession of Taxil, the French freethinker who first exposed Catholics and then Masons, makes interesting reading bearing on the present situation today. Similar motives activate some of the muck rakes of today, as indicated in the following confession. Is that it?
Yeah, no, go.
The public made what I am, the arch liar of the period.
This is what the Taxil says.
Confess Taxil. For when I was first commenced to write against the Masons, my object was amusement, pure and simple. The crimes I laid at their door were so grotesque, so impossible, so widely exaggerated, I thought everybody would see the joke and give the credit to the originating.
Credit for originating a new line of humor.
Me credit for originating new line of humor, but my readers wouldn't have it so. They accepted my fables as gospel truth, and the more I lied for the purpose of showing that I lied, the more convinced became they that I was a paragon of veracity. Then I dawned upon I have to get closer. Then it dawned upon me that there was lots of money in being a Munchausen of the right kind. And for 12 years I gave it to them hot and strong, but never too hot. When indicating such slush as the story of the devil snake who wrote prophecies on Diane's back with the end of his tail, I sometimes said to myself, hold on, you are going too far. But I didn't. My readers even took kindly to the yarn of the devil who, in order to marry a Mason, transformed himself into a crocodile and, despite the masquerade, played the piano wonderfully well.
I mean, guys, I'm believing in this. It's pretty far-fetched stuff. I mean, people can be credulous, but I mean, here we're talking about...
that's ridiculous.
It's completely ridiculous. There was definitely an intent here to, first of all, destabilize Freemasonry, because, like I said, at one point, a Supreme Council even awarded an honorary 35th degree to Diana Vaughan, and I have the document somewhere. I have to pick it up. This is incredible. I mean, imagine giving a 35th degree document. I think I have it actually even in a book that I have back there. Just a second.
Oh, man.
No, just a second. Yeah, it was published here, but it was also here, a reference to it is published here. But if you want to find the original document, then you have to go, and I have to get my mother to send it, the memory of the 33 of Domenico Margiotta. Domenico Margiotta also was this guy who was typical Italian Freemason crook that you still have to this day. He was basically selling knighthoods titles, and, you know, people love their cloaks in Italy and going around with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, no comment. No comment. And so what happens here was that Margiotta was kind of not going so well. His business was not going so well. But then Leo Taxil really convinced him one day. And he managed to convince him because he knew about a meeting that went on in Naples at one point with a couple of people that Margiotta used to like very much. And he said, you know that Diana Vaughan talked very well about you after he met you there. I can't tell you. Oh, maybe yes. He started. He was so convinced. And in the end, he was so convinced that in the book he wrote, it was the wonderful encounter. She was great. Diana Vaughan, what a woman. And, you know, this gives you the general idea also of this whole farce, you know. There were people like Diana Vaughan, who was a simple secretary, never been a Freemason, never anything. She only was the representative of a company that made, I call them?
typewriters
from America. That was an American company. She actually was also helpful in suggesting a couple of private post companies that he could use to send around that the letters could be sent around from, because then he then created another female character. I think it was Sophia Wader, I can't remember now. But she needed then a friend of Diana to write these letters for. So she also participated to the hoax, this friend. She wrote some letters. So it's like me with a bunch of people, and everybody starts to work under this umbrella of bullshit that has to be.
Is he like financially wealthy, like independently wealthy or something that he could afford?
He made money with this stuff. This is how he make money, because at that time, he admitted he made a bunch of money with these books.
Yeah.
We're talking about a lot of books. We're talking at that time, there was no TV, no radio, no nothing. There was books, and books sold a lot.
I'm sure those books sold.
And those books sold everywhere. So I think that today it was an interesting episode because, this scenario was definitely a very particular kind of scenario. We don't really, the accounts of Leo Taxil need to be studied better, especially the earlier accounts with the Jesuits, because I think that the devil hides in the detail, of course. And I think that he wasn't completely honest in saying that the Jesuits weren't in this whole hoax. And that is what also is the belief of Grandmaster Luigi Prunetti, author of various books, and what he said about it. So I think that we need to end this broadcast also with this other whole thing that is part, they always talk about Albert Pike, and then Giuseppe Mazzini, and then there is this letter about the Third World War and the Second World War and the First World War. Well, that is another hoax also, but it wasn't Leo Taxil. So we're not going to include it in today's episode. But I talk about it in my book too, because it was also another hoax, and still to this day. But it wasn't completely a hoax, because that Third World War, the way it was described, the way, the Muslims were, it actually is realistic, because you have to understand these hoaxes. It was the Jesuits who put that hoax together. I know that for sure. That is another topic.
Put together January 6th.
The Jesuits are geniuses in putting together fake scenarios. So in the end, we can definitely say that he was working along with the Jesuits. He might have, to some extent, also had some collaborators at a high level in the Vatican, especially because when I read about, when he went in 1897 in front of the audience and he talked about his meeting with Cardinal Rampolla, I know for sure that Cardinal Rampolla is a Mason.
Yeah, he is.
He was. How can a Mason say, and he actually said, Cardinal Rampolla used to call me my dearest. Now, my dearest is a term Freemasons use very much. Carissimo is a typical of Freemasonry. Mm-hmm. So he must, first of all, he was implying it for that reason. But then there was also another thing. He said, I read all your book. You're really true that Freemasonry is satanic and stuff. So he knew, the thing is this, even the Pope, when he met Leo Taxil, said, it's really incredible how already as an apprentice you understood the satanic mission of this institution, which is Freemasonry. Because it's true, guys, Freemasonry was overtaken in the end by Satanists, and it happened gradually. But if you are not part of this world, at times these hoaxes become part of your life, And that's why when I remember on InfoWars once they asked me about these Albert Pike letters on the world wars, and I told them, the historical truth. I told them there is an interesting element that they came out of a bishop, of the Catholic Church. They came out of through through an author who was, I think, a Canadian who had also been a member of the armed forces and of the intelligence. It came out from interesting sources, this whole thing, this whole hoax. But then people tend to always spectacularize everything. And I'm here telling you, yes, there is a conspiracy. Because unfortunately, you know, once the devil managed with this mystification, it's almost like what happened here in America with the 80s and 90s and the satanic ritual abuse scare. The satanic abuse scare.
Yeah, because they made it like a joke.
Yeah, but initially everybody
was on Oprah and, you know,
like
a big... I mean, people were scared. They actually
like I explained in Volume 8, it was the wife of Al Gore who went on and launched this whole thing.
I wasn't scared, though.
You know? No, but I mean, they went on record with all these stories of Satanists here, there, and everywhere. And then in the end, you know, it goes up to a climax in which everybody's talking about Geraldo Rivera, or Oprah Winfrey, or whatever. And then it kind of like bursts like a bubble. And from that moment onwards, everybody says, well, it's just fake. Satanists they're good people. Yeah, let's welcome them at the Capitol Hill of every state in America with their Baphomet image, which, by the way, was the image that was used by Leo Taxil, and it was then used before him by Eliphas Levi. Yeah. So that statue then ended up being the statue that 10 years ago the Satanic Temple brought to the Capitol Hill, and that has the two children. And we can find it on the internet very easy. You just put the Satanic Temple and you put the Satanic and the Baphomet statue, and that's where it's. So in reality, Leo Taxil wasn't that far from the. If he came back, he would see that a lot of the things he wrote in some way materialized, because he was somebody who died in 1907, and soon after we have Aleister Crowley. Then later on we have Anton LaVey. Then later on we have Michael Aquino. Then in the end we have Lucien Greaves, who just brings you in front.
Is that one guy with the one eyeball?
Yes.
Like my eyes hurting today.
But it's Baphomet, the Satanic Temple, and you can see the same image, the statue of Baphomet, and it's very clear to everybody where it comes from. So was Leo Taxil so far from the truth, or was Leo Taxil once again anticipating almost the truth? Because it's almost like he was functioning as a disinfo agent that was anticipating the times. This is the Satanic Temple,
terrible,
watch at the Capitol.
How can they put that there?
There.
How can they
in the name of religious freedom.
How can they do that?
In the name of religious freedom. So it's you understand?
I want to see that.
I mean, it's insane, guys. It's insane. If we teletransported in time Leo Taxil today, he might have been right about a lot of things. Because suddenly the Memphis and Mizraim took over by the Satanists. John Yarker gave that patent to Crowley. Crowley then ended up with Michael Berthiaud. Berthiaud ended up with people like Fritzwold. And now Satanist. Carl Abramson, Anton LaVey, 1966, taking basically and amplifying Satanism to the pop culture with the Satanic Bible. Michael Aquino blessing the American military intelligence with his version of Satanism. These people with the Satanic Temple now in the name of religious freedom wanting to also become political and presenting a documentary at the Sundance Film Festival with go and read what, like I wrote in Volume 8 of my Confessions, read what they write about the Satanic Temple, or the libtards, the leftists that are their natural allies. Thank you so much, guys. I think that today
I'm tired of these Satan's baffling it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
My candle.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's incredible, though, how, you know, maybe it's a way, you know, Satan tends to bring you something in an untrue form, like it happens with the satanic scare abuse. And now nobody believes that there is thousands of children every single day that, because of the laws made in Washington and the guy who is in the White House, Joe Biden, are entering this country without their parents and disappear in pedophile circles or get sacrificed directly to the devil. This happens. This happens today in America.
We have to change things. We have to make it better. We can't go on like this.
This is, you know,
we can't go on like this. God's had enough.
It's incredible how things have developed, you know, in the last few years. I mean, the disbelief in the existence of most of the things that Leo Taxil wrote is natural, and for most at that time, including the implication, the involvement of Albert Pike, they were completely fake. There was also a statement that is always made by the conspiracy theorists, you know, about Jesus, Lucifer. Okay, there is some references actually in Albert Pike's writing, but the reference they instead use most of the time is the reference made by Diana Vaughan in a note of one of her books that, of course, were written by Leo Taxil. So it's like this whole thing this whole mystification is still now present in our society in one way or another, when, for example, the Freemasons like to talk about it, like in their research lodges. I just pinpoint on one of them that I picked up today, and they talk about it. Of course, they can have, they can always be right. They can always tell you, no, but it's, you know, it's all fake because you see here, the devil's weed and the Luciferian flame. The devil's weed, this was the marijuana, the hashish. But in reality, Aleister Crowley wrote a whole book on the use of hashish and marijuana in iniziati. Okay, you hear me? Yes. Arturo Reghini wrote about the consummation of hashish in his own book on Freemason. Arturo Reghini is the founder of one of the main rites in Italy. Somebody says there is no sound of the mute sound. Okay, maybe there is sound. Can you hear me? Mute.
Yes.
Mute. Yes, can you hear me? Yes, okay. Sorry, there was a big problem here with the audio when we were just moving along, but it was important for me to, in fact, I'm gonna make it bigger and just do it like this. Okay, so this is the article. It's actually talking about the Leo Taxil hoax, and it's pretty much correct historically and everything, you know, and then they talk about April 19th, 1897, when Taxil showed up alone with wearing a fez and gave one of the most hilarious press conferences of the century. Great stuff, guys. Okay, I think that today we have had to analyze a very unusual part of the Illuminati occult history that we are exposing every week. Me and Christy are very happy about, of course, seeing you always present here in the chat, and we like to thank once again our sponsors. Please, Christine.
Bruce, Corey, and Pina.
Okay.
Thank you, and everybody who bought the books.
Bruce Kodish, Corey Chavez, and Pina, thank you so much, because without you, this show will not be possible. We, of course, invite you to donate through GoFundMe, also through Cash App, if you want to give us, of course, a hand to carry on in our mission. We would like to do more shows, but this is the most we can bring you with the present state of donations that we have, and we really thank the friends who made this show possible, because without you there will be no show. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You know who you are.
You know who you are. God bless you, guys. God bless you. We will now actually look into Gives and Go, which, by the way, uses those Stripe, the same system which is used by Foundry. So let's see what happens.
Bye, everyone. See you next time.
Have a great week. And write to us, let us know what you think of this Exploring the Illuminati Occult series, and we will continue bringing you other episodes.
Ciao for now.
Ciao for now. I'm from Palm Springs, California. In 1 month we have contact in the desert arriving to town. Ah! That's really something.